Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Indigo Womb Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host and sister friend, Shatia Tee Owsley, and thank you for watching and or listening. So sit back, grab some tea and a notebook, and let's vibe together as we have organic and practical conversations embracing intuitive womb wisdom, spirituality, and a sprinkle of magic to rebel, restore, and radiate overall wellness in our lives. Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of Indigo Womb Wisdom, the podcast. I am your host and your sister friend, Shatia Tee Owsley, and today I would like to introduce our guest, Jade Hillery. Jade is a doula, a sensual movement facilitator, and an SRHJ advocate. And Jade gonna tell us what when we get up into this conversation. Jade is a passionate sexual and reproductive health and justice advocate that believes everyone deserves compassion, education, and support across the spectrum of pregnancy-related outcomes. She dedicates her time to making this belief a consistent reality through her roles as a full-spectrum doula, a sex educator, trainer, speaker, and sensual and erotic movement facilitator. For her, the intersection of these seemingly distinct roles is supporting and facilitating experiences for people to tap in and celebrate their own power, voice, and embodied self-trust. Come on, bio. Come on, Jade. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me. I know I read just a little bit of your amazing bio, but you're doing a whole bunch of dope stuff. And I would like for you to introduce yourself to our guests for those who are watching, and just tell us, let's start with how you got started.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to be here. It's always so, I don't know, interesting or funny to me to be able to share my story, because when people read it off, I'm just like, girl, you are doing a lot. But it really does. Now it makes sense to me. In 2025, I can see the pieces coming together. I have those beautiful mind moments of like, okay, all of this actually makes sense now. And so here we are. So the very start of my story, I always like to look back into my past and see if there were moments in time that make sense now as far as, oh yeah, actually this makes complete sense as to why you do what you do these days. And so I would say the very first thing about my story is something that my mom still does to this day. So every year on my birthday, she will call me and tell me when I've been born, and then she will recount my story for me, our story for me, and just talk about all the different emotions, what was going on, who was there, the process of birth. And so I've been hearing this story for a really long time. So I always like to say that is the very first seed that was planted, as far as this is a monumental, important, and vulnerable day for folks. Something so beautiful is created out of it. And it is something to celebrate. So that's like the very first thing. But if you fast forward, the official bio really starts in 2011. I was living down in South America. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Prior to that, I was a college student, and I, had all the gumption, and I was like, I'm going to be a diplomat. I'm going to go out here and change lives and build public, international relations, but I need to go get some experience. Let me go into the Peace Corps. And so went to the Peace Corps, was there for the standard 2 years, 3 months. And during that time, I focused a lot on community health promotion and public health projects. And that is where I realized, oh, girl, this is actually what you really enjoy. This is what you should be doing. And so while I was there, I worked with, young people. I worked with teens. I did a lot of sex education, realized I really enjoy talking about that topic and, ushering in these new folks as far as how to build healthy boundaries and consent. And of course, the latest and greatest of condoms on bananas, STIs, pictures of things, all that type of stuff. But it really was about supporting these young folks, especially in making decisions for themselves about how they wanted to show up in the world in this particular aspect of their life, which at that time, because everybody's so horny, it's a big thing. So, and during that time, I also had a community partner who was an OBGYN, because my main partner was the health center staff. She was an OBGYN. I was like her little shadow. We used to do postpartum home visits. We went to the local, because there was like an actual prison that was nearby the town that I lived in. So we would go over there, do education sessions. She would do pap smears with her staff. And I'm just like, this is information that's needed. This is information that's needed. I am in my early 20s, and I'm working with women in their 30s, 40s, sometimes 50s, and they don't have this information. And so, it was also at that time, just a lot of pieces eventually coming together, but it was also at that time that I learned that Erykah Badu was a doula. And the reason I learned that is because I was, down in South America. My mom would send me care packages, and she would include Ebony and Essence magazine. Ebony, I believe it was, they did a spread on Erykah as a doula. And I said, put a pin in that. That seems interesting. And yeah, all of these things just kind of coalesced and, were just kind of jumbled around in my brain. But before I left Peru, I made the decision. And I remember telling my mom this. I said, I want to do sex ed. And she was like, I don't know if that's a real job. I said, well, we gonna figure it out. If I'm able to do it down here, then I'm sure I could do it back in the States. And sure enough, entered into a Master of Public Health program, moved out to California where I was living at the time, and was a health educator for a community clinic and worked with their teen clinic and spread the good gospel of sex ed all around North County, San Diego, and took my very first, very, very, very first training, doula training, just to test the waters. Because I believe it was University California, San Diego, they had a birth center in their hospital. And I said, that seems really innovative. Why don't more people have this? Turns out that there are other places around the country that do something similar, but it was big and new for me at the time. And so they needed a new crop of volunteer doulas. And I said, well, let me just dip a toe in, see if it's something that I want to do. And the answer was quickly yes. And so at that point in time, the schedule wouldn't allow for it, but I said, I'm coming for this dream. And at that point in time, I didn't see sex ed and doula work as commingling. Eventually I got to a place where I was like, oh yeah, actually that makes the most sense. This is just an expansion of what I'm already doing. And so yeah, went on about my business, continued to do sex ed, moved back to the East Coast, took my very first official doula training towards certification in 2017. And I've been rocking and rolling ever since. And that's the doula and sex ed stuff. Now, with the sensual movement stuff, that's a whole other ball game. And that started, the very first instance of that started in 2010. I was fresh out of college, looking for something spicy to do. And a friend said, we should take this, exotic striptease type class. And she had the right person because I said, sign me up right now. Got my little button down t-shirt. We learned a routine and it was, a 4-week series. And I kept going and she did not. And here we are, however many years later. But with that, yeah, it started as a hobby. I became more invested in hardcore and to going to classes, 4 or 5 times a week, starting in 2014 when I moved back to the States. And that's also just been a beautiful journey of discovery and then figuring out that this also makes sense with the doula business and the sex ed stuff, because it's all about bodies and choice and embodied self-trust, like I have in my bio, but also about creating and facilitating the spaces for folks to really be able to find themselves. So yeah, became really hardcore with the level of training and being a student in 2014. And in 2020/2021, that is when I finally, somebody was wild enough to let me become an instructor. And I said, thank you, because I've been waiting for this day. I wanted to do this for quite some time. So thank you for believing in me enough to be able to give me a staff position at a studio. And yeah, I've been teaching classes ever since. And I focus a lot on, so the main apparatus that I started with was pole. So I'm a pole dancer. And back in the day, I used to do a whole bunch of aerial things because that was the trend at the time. Eventually, I said, this is really hard on my body. Also, might not be the best at this version of it. And I eventually found my way closer to the ground. So I tell people that my specialty is an off-pole movement. So I do a lot of floor work, a lot of wall dance, a lot of chair dance. And then when it comes to pole dancing, I do a lot of low flow and bass work. So I don't do a lot above standing high in the air. But there's so much you can do from standing and below. That bottom half of the pole, that's my entire playground. We gets active. And yeah, just so many intersections and connection points between all 3 of the worlds that eventually it got to a point where I couldn't ignore that all of these things do layer on top of each other. And everyone else around me was like, well, yeah, girl, we've known that for quite some time. We were just waiting on you to get there. And so eventually I did get there and I saw, like I said, the connection points. So I'm gonna pause here. That was a lot, but that is my story.
I love it, and you made so many great points. I'm like, "Where's my pen? Where's my pen? Where's my" I didn't even wanna move to, like, be a distraction to get my pen. It's like, "Shatia, why you ain't your pen ready?" But I just wanna say, especially for those entering into new to birth work,
Mhm.
right? You are such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Because I say that because a lot of times, and this is from like several conversations, many conversations that I have had with new people coming into the field of birth work.
Mhm.
They know what it is or they want to be a doula, right?
Mhm.
And they really don't see anything else outside of
Mhm.
being a doula. Like their focus is just 100% on a doula, on being a doula. And we need doulas,
Mhm.
right? And we definitely need quality, creative, inspiring, empowering doulas doing this work. But I always like to tell people nothing else, birth work, it's like you're an artist, right? Because you can really, the sky is the limit in birth
Sky is the
work.
limit,
Like
yeah.
there are no limitations on what your practice looks like, what your story looks like. I mean, and you are a prime example. Because for those new coming in, they might have never thought, wow, I can integrate so many different
Mhm.
things, especially what I'm learning and just talking to so many dope birth workers like yourself is that we have so many ideas and that we
Mhm.
want to do so many different things, but we are trying to figure out how do we integrate them all.
Yeah.
But when you really sit down and you really start moving through these different paths, they intersect
Mhm.
sooner than you think that they do, a lot
Right.
closer than you
Yep.
think that they do. And so, again, thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for telling your story because your story will inspire others. Girl, it's inspiring me. I got to take a class, okay? Inspiring others to say, hey, I don't have to put myself in a box.
Mhm.
Being a doula, being a birth worker does not just mean that I have to be in the hospital or
Right.
be at home or just helping people through that process. It's so much bigger, it's so much broader. And
Yeah.
so I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So did you, oh, okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, so on top of the 15 other jobs that I have, I'm now a doula trainer. And one of the reasons why I decided to step into that type of role, like once I put all the imposter syndrome and all the doubts away, was because I took a step back and I looked at my own journey and I said, Jade, you've had a lot of conversations with yourself over X amount of years that have supported you in getting to this point and clearing out some of the lies that your brain has made up about what this is supposed to look like and how you're supposed to approach and whatever else was coming up for you. And I said, what would it look like if you were able to give voice to some of those things for the newer doulas and be that doula for other doulas in the process? So that was what you referenced is specifically one of the reasons why I'm now in this space and trying to create other spaces for folks to figure it out, to let them know that it is okay if it doesn't look like everybody else's. Actually, that's better. And when we think about the sustainability of this work, you'll actually be able to sustain a little bit longer, be a little bit happier if you're able to integrate other pieces and expand beyond what you think a typical quote unquote birth work practice should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So you made a point, and this is something that I think many of us, whether you're in birth work or not in birth work, I think that we see it a lot, is imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Right. And so even if it's just a little bit, even if it's not so overwhelming, but it is something that is getting a little bit more attention, I
Mhm.
guess, and why it's important that we address it and that we talk about it. And so how did you overcome imposter syndrome? Because you're doing a lot.
I
And
am.
and the stuff that you're doing, right?
Mhm.
You're not behind the scenes.
Mhm.
The stuff that you are doing puts you in the forefront of
Yeah.
people to see, to talk, to
Yeah.
feel. And it's in one of the most vulnerable and sacred spaces that you can be in, not only for yourself, but for those that you are serving. as well. And so, what are some of the things that you did, or how do you feel that you were able to overcome or continue to overcome
Yeah.
imposter syndrome?
Yeah, and it's a great point that you brought up at the very end. Like, it is something that I have to actively work on. I wish I could sit here and say, I stamped it out and I don't have to worry about that no more, like, wipe my hands of it. Absolutely not. It is an active practice that, and I just had a moment like this last night because I'm supposed to be performing tomorrow. This is like the dance side of things. I'm supposed to be performing tomorrow, and I'm in here practicing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Jade, like, you're about to be on a stage with other people and you've never been a part of a burlesque show before. And then I was like, wait, yes, you have. What are you talking about? Where is that coming from? Get that out of here, because that is not even true. And I freaked out for about 20 seconds, but for that 20 seconds, it felt very real. So it's like having to actively remind myself or flag for myself what is true out of what you are thinking right now. What part of this is actually true? If it's not true at all, where is this voice coming from? Is it because, you have an expectation because of something that you've seen or because of something that someone else has said? Or I always like to say, we walk around life for the most part, when we're in our own bubble, we're doing our own thing. And then maybe we encounter or we're out in the world and people put stuff on us. So what have other people put on me that I now need to take that off, because that actually doesn't belong to me. So I try to engage in those types of thought exercises. That's the biggest thing. The second thing is therapy. I've had so much therapy, and a part of me going to therapy was specifically about being in the world of doulas. And it's not that, something had happened where I felt like I was traumatized and I needed to overcome that, but it's just like I'm trying to do something and these thoughts keep coming up and I keep stopping myself. And so I need a little bit of external support to figure out, like, to get all the stuff on the table and then start to clear out what actually doesn't belong to me and have some tools to be able to move forward and do what I'm really passionate about, or what, like, I really want to give this my all. And something is stopping me, and it's not necessarily anybody else. Like, I'm not, up against these huge barriers, but something internally is stopping me. So one of my goals, or one of the things that I wanted to focus on in therapy for the last few years, is just like, what is this? Because this ain't working for me. It's not serving me, and I need somebody help. Somebody help, because I don't know what to do. And that has been a really big help. And then another thing that I try to do, and I offer this to do, like, any doula that is in a training with me or, takes workshops with me or whatever, and I'll share this with your audience as well, is I have affirmations. And my very first affirmation, when I was worried about, because I'm a doula that is in the DC area. I don't have any kids. I also have a full-time job. And I'm like, nobody's going to want to come and have me be their doula. Like, I've got too much going on, but also I've never experienced this physically myself. And for the longest time, I'm just like, I'm walking around with that energy and, people weren't picking me. And so I tried to adjust my thinking around that. And so my first affirmation that I had when it came to birth work was, my people will find me. My people will find me. And so with that, I just feel like it opens up room for, like, the people I'm supposed to work with. They're out there. They will find me. The people that'll find my skills, talents, abilities, my energy valuable, they'll find me. It might take a little while, but my community is out there. So that was like the very first affirmation that I ever had. The second affirmation that I came up with for myself, and this specifically relates to, trying to set up my business and have things, have the graphics and the, charts and the forms, and, seeing all of these templates for things out in the world, or seeing, doulas who have been doing the damn thing for quite some time and their stuff is set. Seeing this, and I'm just like, gosh, I only have access to Google Docs and Jotform or whatever other free services. And is this going to be good enough? And so having to eventually remind myself that it doesn't have to be in its final, most perfect form for me to put it out into the world. And so that just leaves room for growth and space and the iteration over time of whatever the systems, forms, policies, whatever they might be. I also try to give myself permission to just iterate over time. Like, again, it doesn't have to be in its final form for it to be okay enough to put out into the world. For the people that are my people that want to work with me, that will not necessarily be a deterrent just because we're using Google Docs or, versus some fancy CRM. But, giving myself the space to be able to build up to those things. Another affirmation that I got from a therapist, it's not necessarily an affirmation, but more of a reframe, was around, considering myself an expert. And that just feels so heavy because I know what expert means. And I know I go to these experts and they have like this wealth of knowledge, and feeling like I don't have that. So I'm just sitting around here and they're going to find out that I don't have this knowledge. And so reframing from thinking of myself as an expert to saying I have expertise in these areas, because again, that just left so much room for, I acknowledge all of the skills and knowledge I have today, and I know there's room to grow, but I'm also willing to go find it when I need to, or just leave space for the continued education. Like, I'm a big believer in continuing my education. The party doesn't stop at this one workshop, but I got to give myself the room to be able to seek that out, and also convey to other people that, and I always say there's nothing more powerful than saying to somebody, I don't have that information today, but let's figure it out, or I'll go and find it and we can talk through it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another one. And then the final one, because there's been this boom in doulas and a lot of folks are interested. And I'm just like, well, there's so many doulas out there. Why would somebody want to choose me because I have all these things going on? And so when I say, my people will find me when that isn't working or hitting as hard as I need it to, what I will remind myself is like what I specifically have to offer to the world and community is valuable and unique, and no one can me like me. No one can doula like me. No one can doula like Jade the doula. No one can do these placentas like Jade the placenta encapsulator. No one can run a pole essentials class like Jade, or excuse me, in those spaces I'm JJ, like JJ Francesca. So, having these affirmations has been really powerful, really helpful when I see the thought bubbles coming up like, oh girl, what are you doing? Just like, okay, let me pull one of these out the drawer, because clearly I need it in this moment to remind myself that iteration is okay, that continued education is okay, that my people will find me, they're out there. Even when I have a little lull, it's because my people are trying to make their way to me, or maybe I just need a little bit more time. And that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I love
But
it.
it's been hard fought. It has been hard fought, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy with where I'm at today.
I love it. I love no one can me like me. Like, that is bars, right?
Listen, I've always said that my next thing might be a rapper or a DJ, so don't tempt me with a good time. I just need a little bit of time in the studio to get these bars together. That might be
Okay.
the first one.
I love no one can me like me because, again, it helps us all to really be present, right? And just like you said, there are when you come into birth work, there is like, oh, that's shiny. It's
Mm-hmm.
so many shiny things
So
that are
many.
out here. And the shiny things could be a website that you've seen. The shiny
Mm-hmm.
thing can be all the trainings that are available that you can take. The shiny things can be all of the equipment that you can buy, right? And sometimes we get so hung up on the stuff
Yeah.
and trying to get all the stuff and trying to make sure we have all the knowledge. If I just get one more training, if I
Yeah.
just go to one more thing and do one more thing, when, like you said, when we actually take a moment to sit back and just be present, a lot of the stuff that we have
Mm-hmm.
is already within.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have been called to this work if you did not have what spirit
Mm-hmm.
wanted you to have to reach the people that you were destined to reach and you're supposed
Absolutely.
to reach, right?
Absolutely.
So all the stuff, right, will come, right? Whether it's the equipment, whether it's the trainings, whatever it is. But when people are called to you or drawn to you or attracted to you or moved to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of the time it's your presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's your personality. It's how you make them feel when you're in that space. So again, no one can me or you like you, right? Because you bring something that no one else brings. And I think that is so beautiful and such a great reminder for us when we're up here.
Yeah.
Right? When we are floating up here, when we get the thoughts,
Hmm.
whether they are good, bad, or indifferent, right? But it helps to ground us. It helps to bring us back to the sacredness of this work, the ancestral lineage of our work. Our ancestors didn't have all this
They
stuff,
did not have all this stuff.
but they had intuition.
Right.
They had a presence. They had love. They had just community, right? And that is what I think sometimes we can lose sight of in the world of shiny, right?
Absolutely.
In a capitalist society, right? Of where we are and where we're living in, is we got to have all the stuff. But that's not usually why people are drawn to you. It's usually not because of the stuff, of why someone wants you in the room with them at their most vulnerable state in their
Right.
most sacred time,
Right.
and they have thrown caution to the wind and there's no modesty, and you
Hmm.
see me in my wild woman era,
Yeah.
right? They not thinking
They're
about
not thinking
your
about
doula bag. They don't care
at
about
all.
your scrubs.
At
They don't
all.
they don't care about none of that.
Yeah.
Jay, how we gonna get through this next rush? How we
Yep.
gonna get through this next surge that I have going on? And it's your love, it's your passion, it's your compassion and your presence. And so that is a message, especially for new doulas, doulas who have been in the game for a long time,
Yeah.
to kind of bring us back down, to why we chose this work in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually actually reminds me of, oh, I still have a full-time job to this day, but when I first started there and was beginning my journey as a doula, and like I said, I'm still relatively new in the organization at that point in time. There was a woman, black woman, and we're still homies to this day, but there was a black woman. I'm sitting at my desk minding my own business, and she plops down next to me and she said, "You're going to be my doula one day." I said, "Oh, okay." Like, again, minding my own business. She said, "You're going to be my doula one day." Because, when I think about who I would be most comfortable having in the room with me, and when I think about that moment in time, she said, "You have the energy that I want." And this is like, I barely made it out of training just now. So I'm glad you feel so highly of me. Fast forward to a few years later, I was her doula, and yeah, it was a beautiful experience, and we've been tight since then. And yeah, I've gone through some different situations when it comes to their lives, but I will never forget that moment. It's just like, girl, you barely know me. What you talking about? I don't even know if I want to do that. And, we got to know each other more. And like, I really got into my, mental doula bag. I said, "Oh, okay, I see what she talked about. I see." Because
It's me.
it's me. Other people have also affirmed that, when I'm in the room with them, when I'm working with them during prenatal sessions, I do have this very calming spirit. I like to think of myself like a rock that's grounded amongst all the chaos. And so if you need a lifeline, just hold on to me, look at me, and we will figure this out piece by piece. And it wasn't until other people affirmed that that's how I show up in those spaces that I was like, "Oh, okay, this is the energy that I'm giving off." Because internally, I know what's going on in my mind, and that's not that. But I'm glad that I'm giving you what you need externally.
Yes.
Cool. Cool. But she was able to pick it up even as early as, like I said, fresh out of training. We're just really getting to know each other. So I was like, there's something there. Believe people in certain situations, believe people when they are trying to reflect back to you what they see.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. So let's jump back into, you became a doula, you're
Mhm.
doing doula work. I mean, you have current clients, that you are working with. How do they find you? And when they find you, what is a consultation like with Jade the doula?
Great question. So at this point, I have, saved up enough pennies, and I've got enough clients on the books every year, or I'm doing enough of all the other things in my business, to be able to afford a website. And so I launched my website, I want to say in 2021 or 2022. Up until that point in time, I was using all the free stuff I could find to get myself out there. But now I have a website, so they're able to find me that way. I've had people find me through Instagram, and then word of mouth is also another way that folks find me. And then every now and then I'll see people that say they found me through a good old fashioned Google search. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm glad that's working out for me. And so they will, go through my website or go through my calendar, schedule a time that works best for them. And my consultations at this point, I've gotten them down to about 30 to 45 minutes, because it used to take me like an hour, hour and a half, because I would try and give you everything because I really wanted to make sure you chose me. And so now I've become more efficient with the questions that I ask, and how I get them to open up about what they're looking for. And just how I'm also responding to questions. So, unlike right now, I'm actually very concise with my words during a consultation. But yeah, so consultations typically look like quick introductions. I'll review the form that I have them fill out just when they request a consultation. And that form will have things like their name, their pronouns, if their partner's going to join us, their pronouns, their estimated date of birth, location that they plan on giving birth in. And then if they're looking for other services, like I also do placenta encapsulation. So are you interested in that as well? If so, what products? And then once they get to me, first thing is I'll review that just to make sure nothing has changed, but also just a way to kind of break the ice. And then I like to give people the choice of how we proceed, because I found that some folks will come with a whole list of questions and like they're very type A, and it's just like, I need to check all these boxes. And so I've been doing research on what to ask doulas, and I'm here. This is an interview. But then I've also found that other folks are just like, I actually don't know what to ask. And I'm so sorry, I don't know what to ask. And, folks keep saying that I need a doula. And I also believe I, want a doula there, but tell me whatever. And so I'll give folks the opportunity, like I'll just flat out say, how would you like to proceed? Do you have a list of questions that you want to start with? Or would you like for me to start talking about my journey or, what I offer? And then we can go from there to see if, that sparks any questions for you. So again, when it comes to like embodied self-trust, but also just the role of a doula, I see this even as an opportunity to support them in having a little bit of control over the situation. Like, you get to choose how you want to move forward. Because I mean, if I go with my route, like every time I have a consultation with somebody, it might turn people off. But also, this is your time to ask me stuff, and maybe you just need like to have some things jog for you. So I give people that option. Depending on what option they go with, a series of questions will eventually come up. It's just like, how did you get into this? How does your doula life work with your full-time life? What does your backup system look like? Of course, pricing. We go over things like what's included in my packages. I will typically ask about, how things have been going with their provider, if they've done things like taking a tour of their birthing location yet, if they're giving birth outside the home, how they've been feeling in general during this pregnancy, what they're looking for or what they've identified as their main support needs. And then another thing that I always make sure to get into, especially if the partner is on the call with them, is how my support also supports them. Because auntie gonna show up for everybody. Like, I'm not just here for the pregnant person, but I do talk about like the benefit of having me in the room and how I try to incorporate, from start to finish, how I try to incorporate partners to the best of my ability and also to their comfort level. But that also kind of helps surface, like, is this going to be a situation where you actually just want me to be there in place of your partner if you have a partner? Because I'm cool with that, but again, auntie needs to know. Auntie needs to know, because that's a different level of energy. Or are we going to be in a situation where you really want somebody who can tag team and we're working as a support system for the pregnant person? And so we really are working in tandem. And I've even had some, especially when we were in the thick of COVID and doulas weren't able to go into hospitals, or like it was a whole thing where like, if you're here, you cannot leave. There is no switching out, things like that, offering myself kind of like a pocket coach to the partner. And I had one situation where I was working with a set of clients and great consultation. We're moving and chugging along. And then, induction kind of pops up on the table and we're coming down to the wire. And so we had figured out how to negotiate, like, we will come in on this day or they will come in on this day versus like right when you're asking us to come in. And so went over to their house, did a bunch of stuff throughout the night with them there to try and really get things like moving and shaking. And in that time, I was able to show the husband, just a bunch of different techniques, review some things, like talk to them about what they could expect. And we also made plans for, when it's time for y'all to go into the hospital, here's how we're going to connect, and just the different ways that, again, I can be a pocket coach to the husband. And sure enough, like, once the morning hit and it was time for them to go to the hospital, I saw them off and continued to check in with the husband throughout the day. And he reported back, like, after, all the revelry and celebration died down from baby finally being born, but reported back that the nursing staff were so impressed with him and how he was able to advocate and use his hands. And like, he was just like, thank you. I was able to show up for my wife in the way that I really wanted, but also they were able to see that, I'd had some coaching and it felt really good to be able to check in with you. So, I talk about situations and I give examples to potential clients, using the real life stories of moments where I've supported. And then I also, of course, try to leave room for, whatever additional questions they have, especially if they have specific situations that they're concerned about. If I have an example for that, then I will give an example. If I don't, then I will talk through what my approach would be, of course, leaving room for, but things could change. I think that those are like some of the highlights as far as what consultations look and feel like with me.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, the story is beautiful because we don't hear too many stories about partners.
Mm-hmm.
We don't hear as many stories about partners that I think that we should be hearing or that we need to hear, because so many partners don't know what they're supposed to do. They have a feeling of, I want to be there, but I don't. How do I show up?
And
And what does it look like?
I'll actually joke with people during the consultation, like, this is how I break the ice. I ask, how involved, partner, how involved would you like to be? Like, sometimes I get a sense of, and I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, Talladega Nights, with Ricky Bobby. He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Right.
And so that's how I'll break the ice around, like, sometimes partners are like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And so I'm around to help you figure out what that looks like. I talk about the fact that the second or like close to final prenatal session that I'll do with folks is comfort measures. And we're going to test out a bunch of different things. And I'm going to show the partner how to use their hands in similar ways to how I would use my hands, and show them, this is what you can do. And like, troubleshoot some of the things, like teaching hip squeezes has become a lot easier when, I show them and then have them do it, and then talk to both of them about, okay, now at this point, y'all need to communicate, because I see what's going on her face, but she's not saying it out loud. And so this is the opportunity for all of us to, just help each other out. And I'll say this, to the pregnant person as well. He doesn't know what's good or bad because he can't see your face. So you're gonna have to work together to communicate. Notice how I was asking you questions like, how is this pressure? And you were able to respond. I said, it's the same thing that needs to happen so y'all can work together. And just in general, not trying to, I think you do a good job of this, and I will remind other people of this, like, it is that partner's birth experience as well. And so how can I support or facilitate connections so that they can feel just as involved, so that they can also feel empowered to be able to go step in and bust out a hip squeeze, or do a belly lift, or, guide folks into position, or, run and get some water, whatever it might be. So yeah, making sure I include education, like the physical education as far as hand stuff, but then also, are they there with us during the childbirth ed that I provide? That at this point, it's become a requirement that they are also there. Like, this isn't just for the person who's carrying the baby.
I love this. Great segue. And you are doing what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You are on the path.
Wonderful.
You are on the correct path, ma'am. And the combination of unique and beautiful modalities that you have brought together, just in that explanation, I was over here smiling, like, let me write this down because I will forget, because I still am in my postpartum time. Okay. I'm still within the 2-year window. I will forget. But it was like, she is doing what she's supposed to do. Like, this is where you are supposed to be in this space, because the explanation, the passion, the compassion behind it, I'm like, I want to be a fly on the wall. I want to sit in on a consultation. And the reason being is I want to know, how do you integrate your sex education and your sexual movement once you decide, okay, we're going to work together? Because, the saying, you hear a lot of people say, and I know my mentor, the same way you got that baby in there is the same way you may have to get that baby up out of there, right?
Mhm.
But what does that look like? Because when we talked, like, earlier in the conversation, and you talked about how so many people, right, are unaware of their bodies. They don't truly know their
Mhm.
bodies. They don't know the names of their body parts. They don't know what it feels like to truly be tapped
Yeah.
into their bodies for various reasons,
Yep.
right? Lots of different things. And that's a whole rabbit hole that we can go down, and we may have to, you may have to come back, and we have to talk about that, right?
Absolutely.
But you know what comes up. Right? You know what comes up for people. And when you're working with your clients and their partners, and you are wanting to empower them, increase the communication, bring them together, right? How are you merging the sensual movement? How are you merging the sex education? How are you merging the doula work together in a way where someone who walks away, goes through the birthing process, comes back and says, thank you? Because they're walking away with more than just, Jade was my doula and she taught me how to do some hip
Mhm.
squeezes, right? No. Anybody looking at this, anybody feeling what I feel, knows that you empower them with something that is used after, that they can continue to use over and over and over again. So, what does that look like? What does that look like for a couple?
Yeah. I mean, on my part, it takes a very intentional effort. And this is like the training and learning design nerd in me. It's just like, let me take a step back and really see how I want to craft what a prenatal session looks like so that I can lean into supporting people and tapping into that power. This is like a weird caveat, but I try not to use the word empower. And I know I've
Mm,
already said it once, but I really do try to reframe it as, how can I support them in tapping into the power that they already have? Because I want to acknowledge that I don't know what's going on outside of this moment right now, but especially when I'm dealing with the Black community, I can only imagine, because as a Black woman myself, I know what I have to go through. So what is a way that I can set up my business, set up these sessions, set up my time with these folks so that I can create the safest space for them to be able to exercise control that they may or may not be getting. But especially when we think about pregnancy and postpartum, and people are told to go left, right, up, down, in between, or we need you to schedule XYZ, or you shouldn't be doing XYZ. And it tries to separate us from our ancestral knowledge, from our community practices, especially our community care practices. And it's just all of the finger wagging that sometimes comes with pregnant people just trying to exist.
mhm,
It's just like, how can I be a moment in time until I can figure out how to change the entire world? How can I be a moment in time where they have control
mm,
and they have clearly laid out choices and they have the information and they know that I trust them to make the decisions that are best for them?
mm,
Like, a big part of it is like truly just trying to have that intention and keeping it front of mind and making sure I weave that through as many parts of my business as possible. And then every so often going back and doing an audit of, does this fall into that criteria? Like, is this another opportunity that I need to rethink how I open this space up? So that's the first thing. As far as what they experience a lot of me creating pause points, clearly laying out options, clearly laying out where we can find more information, supporting them, or even, as we're having conversations, reflecting back to them questions that they've said out of their own mouth. Maybe it didn't come up in the form of a question, but they've said it. So it's just like, okay, that sounds like a great question that you can ask. Let's write that down. Let's make a
mm,
plan.
mm.
it really is that reflecting back to them the things that are already there. And for whatever reason, whether it's, the white coat syndrome, whether it's, trying to be perceived as a good patient, especially if you are a Black person in the medical industrial complex. And I've supported a lot of people through that type of thinking, which is, can be so hard to overcome. It is helping them challenge some of their internal thought patterns and then making helping them make a plan that feels safe enough for them to try. It is affirming what they've already got inside them and like trying to be or trying to lead with like strengths based facilitation. So again, this is where the worlds collide, because in the sex education, sexual and reproductive health education space, my main job is to facilitate learning engagements. And so I talk about it as like I'm holding the container for people to be able to have discussions and figure out a process and how they want to move forward. And so I apply some of those same skills to how I'm working with my clients. As a doula, I'm not always here to have the answer for you. I am here to hold the space and help you like facilitate either the internal conversations that you're having with yourself or with your partner or with the staff, and like popping in and popping out to like be able to help you navigate the space. But it's, it's always about the open-ended questions. It's always about how can I best hold this space so you can get what you need, and we can also support good communication between you and whoever else. I don't want to come in there as an adversary to hospital staff. That's not my goal. My job is to support my client. And I am thinking ahead to like what skills, what question asking supports them in this moment, but then how can they use those skills later? The babies grow up. They will go on this parenting journey. I will not be with them necessarily, but what types of things can be planted now that can continue to bloom throughout the course of this journey for them? So yeah, like when I talk about my role as a doula, I came up with these four things that I really think about, or how I show up and support a family. And so being that mirror for folks is one of them. So I talk about the fact that I'm the plug. I got somebody for just about everything you need. I'm able to identify the needs that you say you have and find the additional support and resources. I got you. I got you. But again, I'm the mirror. So I'm reflecting back the strengths that you have, even if you don't know that they're there. I'm affirming those things and also talking about how it connects to the moment that we're in. Even if it comes down to like a person asked a couple questions at the end of their appointment. Great job. Great job you advocating for yourself and saying something, because that is a big step for a lot of people. I also talk about the fact, and I've referred to myself a couple times in this way on this podcast, I'm the auntie. Auntie gonna take care of her people. She gonna have snacks or treats. We're gonna build a relationship, and hopefully it is one. Aunties are always so different from grandmothers or moms, because it's just like that is that sister friend that you can go to for just about anything. And so for clients who feel that level of comfort, and it's not everybody, but for clients who feel that level of comfort with me, and like she is auntie in the situation, creating that feeling all around, like being consistent in how I do that. But sometimes it really just does come down to the vibe. But that is where I can get into the conversations of movement and how are you feeling in your body. And people are letting me know that they had sex, and it's just like, great. Hopefully there was a little bit of ejaculate, because at this point in time, prostaglandins. But, I'm always connecting it back to like, auntie loves that for you. And hopefully you did it this way so that we can get some things moving. And so, just injecting some of that humor, but also coming with the knowledge. I feel like aunts have a great way of like, I know some things about some things, and also my perspective and worldview allows me to joke with you about it a little bit. So like really bringing that spirit. And then the final way I talk about my doula work is like, I'm the tour guide. I do have all of this knowledge and information that I'm continuing to layer on, and I can support you in understanding what to expect and how you might navigate, and pointing out the things we want to look out for so that you can then make plans that you feel are best for you. And so I feel like those are the types of things that I try to bring into the space when I'm working with people, and that's what they're experiencing, when they work with me.
I love it. I love it. I wrote them down. I wrote them down. I'm gonna have to highlight them so I can be like, from Jade the Doula. Do y'all have these things going on? So as we um start to wrap up, I do. We got to circle back
Okay.
because we need to know, what is an SRHJ advocate?
So SRHJ is Sexual and Reproductive Health and Justice. I just shortened it. Yeah. So I'm not just at this point in my career, I didn't want to just focus on, penis and vagina, condoms on bananas, those types of things. I wanted to really expand, because my work has also expanded into the justice side of things. So if we're talking about sexual and reproductive health services, it's not just is there a clinic available to you to be able to access these things? It's you going into the clinic and you're getting what you need by way of unbiased medical care and attention. Are you getting the resources that you need to be able to successfully do the thing that they're saying that they would like you to do? Because patient compliance is always a big thing, but like, do you actually have the resources to be able to do this? And so expanding how I'm showing up in this space to include the justice piece, because for a long time it really was just the health services or the health education, but now it's like broadening my view and also just acknowledging how I'm showing up differently in the space. And so birth work and just doula work in general is a lot of like that integration or the connection between the two. So I'm a full spectrum doula at this point. I support a lot of different experiences when it comes to pregnancy related outcomes. And I also want to acknowledge that, like, helping people get to the care that they need, but also getting to the resources that they need to be able to make decisions that are best for them so that they can continue to be taken care of, so that their communities can be taken care of. Like, it's not just about this singular focused thing anymore. And like wanting to acknowledge that.
Which goes back to the sky is
The
it's
sky
limitless.
is the limit.
Right.
Yeah.
You can just keep going and going and going, and you can go down so many different paths, which is why birth work is like artistry. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you are the artist, you have the paintbrush, you get to be as creative and to integrate so many different things. So you don't have to feel, oh, I have to be this particular way or I have to do this different thing. No, Jade is telling y'all, no, you don't.
You
You
don't.
do not. Whether, like you said, from being a doula, placenta encapsulation specialist to sexual movement, the list just goes on
What's going
and
on?
on. And you can find the connections.
Mm-hmm.
They are not compartmentalized, they are not separate. You can bring them together. And that in itself, I mean, just the experience that you bring to those that you serve, I mean, it's unmatched, Jade. I mean, I just can't, can you imagine, like, it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna do these hip squeezes, but you're gonna sway a little bit with
Mm-hmm.
it, and we're gonna turn a little bit of music on with it,
Yeah.
and we're gonna feel into it. And how does that feel in
How does
your
that feel in your
body?
body?
How does that feel in your body as
Yeah.
the partner? Look at each other, feel and be in this
Mm-hmm.
space, and that in itself, it brings connection, it brings community, it brings love, it brings support, it brings rediscovery into your own sacredness and how wonderful you are as an individual and as partners coming together. So, as we prepare to close out, I always have a closing question for our guests, and that question is, what would you tell young Jade? What will you tell your younger self?
We don't have another 30 minutes. I would tell her so many things. I think the thing that's come into mind for me, and maybe it's just because I need it in this moment, is you're okay. And I'd say it just like that. You're okay. It'll be okay. You'll figure it out and you'll enjoy the journey to get there. Yeah.
Beautiful. How can we find you? How can they find you? How can they book with Jade? What's your socials? What's the info? Give us the deets, Jade.
Yes. So for the doula side of the street, you can find me at jadethedoula.com. Listen, I'm not great when it comes to naming things. And I remember somebody once told me, like, make sure it's something that can easily be spelled and that they will easily remember. I said, well, they'll remember if it's Jade the Doula, jadethedoula.com. And that's the name of my business too. Because you're getting me. You're getting
Mm-hmm.
me. If you'd like to find me on Instagram, then that's Jade _the doula. And if you're interested in seeing the dancing, because there's a lot that happens on that page as well, or taking a class with me, you can find me through the JJ Francesca, because I have a performer name. And so that's TheFranchesca, the JJ Francesca, over on the other side of Instagram. And I teach classes on Saturdays. I teach like a flow fundamentals with the pole. And then every other Sunday, I do floor work. I do chair dance. This week for the month of February, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but this week for the month of February, we're twerking in my floor work class. I said we gonna switch it up for them because there's a lot that's stored in the hips. That might be a whole other episode for this podcast, but there's a lot
Absolutely.
that's stored in
Oh,
the
you
hips,
coming back. You
and
coming
we
back.
gonna release it.
I already said we got 2 more episodes. 2 more episodes
There's a lot
just based off our convo.
There's a lot that's stored in the hips. And I said, I've taken this training recently because I also believe in continuing education through dance and movement. But I said, there's a lot stored in the hips. This is a fun way to release some of that. And sure enough, people have enjoyed that one so far. And then I also teach on Mondays in Gaithersburg. And I have 2 classes. One is a flow work based class, which taps into the very sacred and sensual movement on the floor, and we tap into the sacral chakra of the pelvis, and that can be a game changer for a lot of people as far as like finding that fluid movement, just tapping into your body a little bit more, finding your unique movement. And then I also teach like a pole essentials class there as well. And I'm trying to think outside of that. I'm also a board member for Aaliyah in Action, which is a 501c3 based in the DC area that provides self-care boxes and bereavement resources for parents who are navigating infant and perinatal loss. Mm-hmm. And that is near and dear to my heart. And so that's another organization. Like if you'd like to find me through there, that is also possible.
Well,
I think that's all the things.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. You coming back? I'm getting on the books. I will send you an email.
Okay.
We have more to discuss.
I'd be happy to. I would be so happy to.
I am so happy that you joined us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You can come back anytime. Anytime.
Don't tempt me with a good time. Now.
I want to thank everybody for joining today. Thank you again, Jay, for being here, and we will see you in the next episode. Peace.